Hello, everyone. You are listening to Scenecraft. From opening shots to long takes and epilogues, we examine our favorite scenes from cinema here on the podcast. I'm Cody, here with my co-hosts,
Mark
and Connor.
You can find Scenecraft on most social media platforms at Scenecraft Podcast for the latest news on the show. Today we will be discussing 2007's There Will Be Blood, directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, and we'll be joined by a special guest and friend of the show, Josh, for our scene selection. We're also excited to announce that at the end of the episode, we'll have a great pro take discussion with none other than Dillon Freasier, who plays the young H.W. Plainview in the film. But as usual, let's begin with our brief What We've Been Watching segment, Quick Takes.
Speak quickly.
Quickly, thank you.
Quickly, come on. Hurry up, quicker.
Way quicker.
Okay, I'll say it fast.
All right, so what have you guys been watching?
So I checked out the recent Netflix release, The River Wild, which was directed by Ben Katai in 2023. And the logline reads, "The story of a pair of siblings who love but distrust each other as they embark on a whitewater rafting trip with a small group." I ended up really enjoying this one. Have either of you guys seen the 1994 film A River Wild with Meryl Streep and Kevin Bacon?
Heard of it, never seen it.
I hadn't even really heard of it until this week.
Okay.
It seems to be making a resurgence because of this Netflix,
I've heard good things.
Yeah.
My dad and I always really enjoyed that movie.
I think it's because of you that I heard of the movie. Yeah.
Yeah. So this movie takes the general premise of that original one, but it kind of updates it to meet more modern sensibilities. My wife and I actually watched this, and we both agreed that it was a really solid thriller. There's a lot of stunts that just felt very real because they appear to be shot on an actual body of water rather than relying on CGI. And it was great seeing Adam Brody tackle a shifty, kind of creepy role in this.
Nice.
I'm just a big fan of his.
Yeah.
I would recommend checking out The River Wild.
Glad you liked it.
Mark, is this lumped into one of those films like, what is it called? The Edge, the one with the bear?
The Edge, yeah. Like wilderness survival.
Yeah, wilderness
kind of
survival
movies.
that like you and your dad like a lot.
Without a paddle.
With
Oh, yeah.
Oh no.
Family favorite over there.
Yeah. We do like those kind of like wilderness survival movies.
Nice.
I also got to finally see Oldboy, which was directed by Park Chan-wook in 2003. The logline reads, "After being kidnapped and imprisoned for 15 years, Odesu is released, only to find that he must find his captor in 5 days." So I think I was the only one of us three that hasn't seen Oldboy before, and it was definitely on my shame list, so to speak. And if I'm not mistaken, I think this movie is surprisingly tricky to find on streaming services. So to my luck, Neon Studios obtained US distribution rights and remastered the film in 4K with a short theatrical re-release in celebration for its 20-year anniversary. So I headed out to the local theater and I got to see it on the big screen, which I think is probably the best way to see it.
Yeah.
And I will say I was blown away by the visual and narrative boundaries this film crosses. I've heard so many things about how brutal and disturbing this movie can be, but I just wasn't really prepared for the way in which it accomplishes that.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen the movie, I plead you to not read anything online about it, because one of the most impressive things for me was how it wasn't somehow spoiled after 20 years of being released.
Nice.
And if I was asked on whether or not I would recommend the film, I would say it really depends on who I'm talking to, because it really depends on what you want out of watching a movie. If you're in search for a wild ride with moments that you've probably never seen on film before, you'll have a blast seeing this for the first time. But I will warn everybody that hasn't seen it, there can be some shocking and upsetting moments in it.
Oh, yeah. Truly.
But that being said, I think the movie is incredible.
Yeah. I'm so glad you enjoyed it. I feel like you saw it in the best way possible, too. So glad it didn't get spoiled for you and that you got to see it in 4K on the big screen. I mean, that is That is so great. I really am glad that you finally saw this movie.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
great. Connor, what have you seen recently?
So I had the chance to check out Telemarketers, a new HBO miniseries by Sam Lippman-Stern and Adam Bala Lau that just came out this year. And it's about two longtime office friends that find themselves hot on the trail of a sobering look at the ugly side of American capitalism and the abuse of customer trust. So, Mark, I know you've seen this, but Cody, have you started this at all?
I haven't yet. No, looking forward to it though. Pending your review.
Yeah, it's interesting so far. So I made time to watch this after hearing the Safdie brothers and Danny McBride, Jody Hill, and David Gordon Green were all involved as executive producers on the project. So that automatically kind of piqued my interest. It's a pretty wild peek inside the world of telemarketing during like the mid 2000s to the mid 2010s. And the way I could sum it up, if you've ever gotten a scam phone call from someone claiming to work at the Fraternal Order of Police looking for a donation, this is the place that did it. So Sam Lippman-Stern started working at this famous, or I guess infamous, telemarketing firm called CDG when he was like 14 years old. He dropped out of high school. And he just started filming all these like wild office antics and putting it on YouTube in the very early days of YouTube. And I'm talking about like people in the office doing drugs openly, getting into fights, drinking. Like it was just a crazy environment. And throughout the course of their time working there, he and his coworker uncovered this web of corruption and lies behind their telemarketing company. And they decide to make a documentary about it, not really knowing anything about how to make a documentary. So the third and final episode will be out by the time everybody's hearing this episode. I would recommend checking out Telemarketers, but fair warning, it does get progressively pretty upsetting from the first episode. So Mark, I don't know what your thoughts are so far.
Yeah, it's a very difficult show to describe to somebody.
It is.
I
Yeah.
found myself not being able to find the words to accurately depict what happens in it because it goes into some pretty weird directions, but I've enjoyed the ride so far.
Yeah, cool. And then in our very first follow-up, I had the chance to watch No Hard Feelings, directed by Gene Stupnitsky from earlier this year. And Cody recommended this one a couple episodes back, so I watched this after hearing how much he enjoyed it. And thank you for the recommendation, man, because I really loved this movie. Wow. I think this is easily one of the top movies of the year so far for me.
Wow.
My wife and I have not been able to shut up about this since we saw it. And Mark, I know that you watched it too. So Jennifer Lawrence is amazing in this. I just have to shout out, I think this role must have just been created only for her. Like, I just can't think of anyone else who'd be able to pull this role off like she did. The laughs per minute are crazy. The comedic performances from everyone are so good. The story feels super fresh, and I just loved how much comedic gold they were able to make out of the generational gap between millennials and younger generations like Gen Z. It felt like such a great takeoff of early 2000s R comedies while just taking it to a whole new level of heartfelt and wholesome. Mark, what did you think?
I ended up loving it too.
Good. Yeah, I would definitely recommend checking out No Hard Feelings as a great late summer feel-good comedy if you haven't seen it yet. What about you, Cody? What have you seen lately?
So I went out to the cinema with my wife to see Theater Camp, which was directed by Molly Gordon and Nick Lieberman. Came out this year, back in July. The logline reads, "The eccentric staff of a scrappy theater camp must band together to keep the thespian paradise afloat." So back in 2020, directors Molly Gordon and Nick Lieberman made a short film with the same title, Theater Camp. And if you don't know the name Molly Gordon, by the way, you'd recognize her as Claire Bear from The Bear Season 2. And Nick Lieberman, he's done a lot of music videos with award-winning actor Ben Platt, who stars in Theater Camp along with Gordon. Gordon and Lieberman pitched the feature version of this film to Jessica Elbaum, who has produced movies like Booksmart, Eurovision, Barb and Star. I think it's important to give a little context about the creators involved here because Theater Camp seems to be flying really under the radar, and these individuals bring a really distinct creativity to the project. I absolutely loved theater camp.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I can't recall the last time I've had this much fun watching a movie. Theater camp is kind of a hybrid between School of Rock and Waiting for Guffman.
Oh, wow. I'm sold.
Yeah, it's the perfect hybrid there, and its young cast members are hilarious and really bright and smart. The movie really cherishes theatrical references and in-jokes without feeling too inside baseball. Like, I recognized a lot of the references, and I don't know a ton about theater. And that's all because the creators were so rooted in theater growing up. They knew how to scale that back and bump it up as necessary. And like I said, this movie came out in July. Luckily, it still seems to be playing at a couple cinemas here and there. So if you can, I highly recommend seeing theater camp in a theater just to get that communal experience watching it, which I think adds a lot to the comedy of the film.
Nice. I'm so glad you loved it.
And then next up, as we're covering There Will Be Blood today, I thought it only right that I watch the one Paul Thomas Anderson film I haven't seen,
Whoa.
Hard 8. Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. The logline reads, a down-and-out drifter is mentored by a professional gambler as they navigate the Reno casino scene. So this is Anderson's debut feature released in 1996. Simply put, I really enjoyed Hard 8, but this is almost like handing a visionary painter a tiny canvas on which to paint, which is understandable, considering he was only 24 years old at the time when he made this, and he was an untested filmmaker. But this is an artist so brimming with style and mastery for character that he somehow outshined the actual plot and pacing of his own script. With that said, there's a ton to love here, including a beautiful performance by Philip Baker Hall, an awesome one-scene bit part by Philip Seymour Hoffman, and some stunning cinematography by Robert Elswit, who went on to make several projects with Paul Thomas Anderson, including There Will Be Blood. And crazy that Anderson hasn't worked with Samuel L. Jackson again since Hard 8, although I think he was offered a role in Boogie Nights. But anyway, I'd absolutely recommend checking out Hard 8, if nothing else, a precursor to other Anderson films, to see that glimmer of promise in the eye of Paul Thomas Anderson, one of the great filmmakers of our time.
Nice.
Well, thank you guys, and now let's move into our discussion about There Will Be Blood, directed by Paul Thomas Anderson in 2007, starring Daniel Day-Lewis, Paul Dano, and of course, Dillon Freasier, who will be joining us after the scene selection to give us his pro take. And as with all of our scene selections, beware of spoilers ahead.
Tell me where it hurts. Tell me where it hurts. Tell me where it hurts. Did you see this? No. Tell me where it hurts. Where does it hurt you? Where does it hurt you?
I can't hear my voice.
Were you hit in the head? Were you hit in the head? Tell me. You have to tell me if you were.
I can't hear my voice.
The logline for the film reads, a story of family, religion, hatred, madness, and oil, focusing on a turn-of-the-century prospector in the early days of the business. Today we are joined by a friend of the show, Josh. What did you think of There Will Be Blood?
Well, yeah, first of all, thank you guys for having me. And really thank you for giving me the excuse to, like, button chair, headphones on, rewatch this movie from start to finish. It's, these days you got to make time for movies, anything over an hour long. So I really appreciate the excuse to do that. I loved it again, all over again. I was reminded of a bunch of just how important this movie was to like my kind of coming online as a filmmaker and like someone who cares about movies. The way I remember it, this movie came out, I think I had just learned about the idea of film school. Like it just was never on my radar. And I had found a program that I just had fallen in love with. So suddenly I was like voracious. I was like, oh my God, I need to go to the video rental store and just like watch Kubrick and every Spielberg ever made and, like really do my due diligence. And then this trailer dropped for this, like, which if if you guys are trailer fans, this trailer is like a masterpiece.
Oh, yeah.
It's almost like schizophrenic because it uses several pieces of music through the movie, and it does these like, emergency brake switches and tone and stuff. It's like, it's very chaotic, but so well put together. This was before, I think, Inception, its trailer kind of came out and just changed the format for trailers going forward. To this day, we're still doing Inception trailers, basically.
Yeah.
But this was before that, so it's very good.
This is the one that sort of ends with his speech to Henry, Plainview, and him kind of cackling in laughter, and then the title coming up, right?
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
And then the title is so like foreboding and like aggressive, but you didn't see anything that was super aggressive. It's like, there will be blood. What's gonna happen? I need to see this movie. So I'm from a super small town in Eastern Ohio. I run to my mom. I'm like, I have to see this movie. We try to look it up, and there's one movie theater playing it like 2 hours away.
Oh, wow.
I'm pretty sure we skipped school, me and the one other kid in my whole town that cared about movies, Jared. Cody, you know Jared?
Yeah, shout out to Jared.
Yeah. We piled into the car. My mom, such a trooper, driving 2 hours to take these two kids to see this random movie called There Will Be Blood. She probably thought it was like some horror movie or something. I think she dropped us off, watched it, and I just remember, I don't remember the initial screening so much, but I remember in the food court afterwards, we were in like a mall, and just kind of sitting there in stunned silence. And I was like, I know I don't understand what I just saw, but I know it was something. It was like a masterpiece, and it's going to take me years to comprehend it, but I was just blown away. And I think that an element of that is still true today. There are still elements of the movie after, however many, dozen of viewings that I've seen this movie. There are still elements that are, vague, intentionally so, or like character decisions that don't quite add up and really like are fodder for larger discussion. And I think that like enigmatic quality is why it's still relevant, why we're talking about it still all these years later. So,
wow, that's great.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, very well said, Josh. I think it's no surprise that we're really big fans of cinema on the podcast here. And similar to you, Josh, we spent a lot of time combing through previous classics while we were in high school. But it wasn't until 2007 when There Will Be Blood was released that I felt like I actually experienced the creation of a future classic. This film was extremely influential on me. It's essentially a character-driven period drama that nears 3 hours long, but it never feels like there's any time wasted.
totally.
Every interaction we see with Daniel and the other townspeople builds the mythos of his character, and we, the audience, get this intimate look at the forces of capitalism, religion, and greed, and how they intersect with one another. It's the central power struggle between the economic and religious pursuits that are embodied by Daniel Day-Lewis and Paul Dano that culminates in this especially memorable but grim conclusion. And I think this film really raises a lot of deep questions about unchecked ambition and its ability to morally decay a person. By the end of the film, we see a completely isolated Daniel Plainview in this mansion, and he's cutting ties with his son and his arch nemesis, which were essentially his last remaining contacts with the outside world. It left me thinking, was it all worth it for him? Is this what he envisioned himself with all of his efforts? Just to be alone, an alcoholic by himself? I don't know, but I'm looking forward to discussing this one with you guys. Connor, what did you think?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I'm with you guys. I'm so glad that we all saw this in theaters in high school. I felt the exact same way about experiencing like a future classic. I think that was a good way to put it, Mark, at the time we saw it. And Josh, like you said, for me, I think I didn't really know what I saw at the time, but I knew it was a special movie that was different than anything that I had ever seen before. I can speak about Mark and Cody's experience because I saw it with them, but you guys were like going crazy about it. And I was always just like a little disturbed by the movie as a whole. So I guess I'd say I really respected the movie, but I like didn't love it at the time. You know what I mean? I also hated Paul Dano, like for no good reason. I think it's just because you really liked him, Mark. But I've completely come around on Paul Dano. I don't know what I was thinking. He's a great actor. I really love him now. For a long time, that first time we all saw it in theaters was the only time I ever saw this movie. I think it's just such a process to put yourself through. But I rewatched it 3 or 4 years ago with my wife for her first time seeing it and was just like blown away by how good it was. I think it really stands the test of time. Like you said, Mark, is just a totally unique and like unforgettable moment in film. Day-Lewis as Daniel Plainview embodies greed, power, and how his character sort of doubles as the spread of oil greed throughout the country at that time. I think everything clicks. The performances, the score by Johnny Greenwood, the writing, and just this explosive directorial vision from PTA. It's so great. What about you, Cody?
Yeah, Connor, it's funny that you bring up the theatrical experience because I don't know if you guys remember, but I distinctly recall after the "I'm finished" at the end of the film, there was a woman who got up and I think she yelled at the screen and was like,
"Oh yeah, I do kind of remember."
Oh my gosh, I do remember that.
Somebody who clearly hated it and walked out and left the movie.
That's right. Wow.
And to me, that sort of defines part of my love for it, is because this movie is so divisive in a way in its style. Like, it is going to drive away mainstream audiences because of what it's trying to do. And I love it all the more for that.
Cody, you said to me once, not everyone is supposed to like it. If it's a great movie, not everyone is supposed to like it. That's always stuck in my head when I'm making something, is I mean, if you lose half the audience, the other half is going to love it. So
oh my God,
let's cater to that.
You're giving me way too much credit. That's hilarious. I mean, There Will Be Blood. There are a handful of movies in my life, in all of our lives, I think, that have had a tangible, formative impact on us and have compelled me to pursue a career in film and also be here with some of my closest friends discussing our common love of cinema. And two of those top films are from Paul Thomas Anderson, who is my favorite filmmaker. One being Boogie Nights, and the other, of course, is this film. There Will Be Blood is definitely in my top 5 favorite films of all time, indisputably.
Mm-hmm.
Like you guys, seeing this for the first time, it was one of those experiences that wakes up your soul in some way. A lot of people argue that the best year ever for cinema was 1939 and, of course, 1999. I know, Josh, you subscribe to that one for sure. But for me, 2007 is definitely a personal favorite because of movies like There Will Be Blood, No Country for Old Men, Zodiac, Ratatouille,
Crazy.
Sunshine, The Assassination of Jesse James. The list goes on and on.
That's wild.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Stacked.
And to me, There Will Be Blood is the shining pinnacle of a process movie, which I think all of us love. You guys know I love it. It takes its time to explore character and theme with an endless capacity for detail. And I don't think I've ever been as entranced by a character as Daniel Plainview, played by the incomparable Daniel Day-Lewis. You could watch his face and voice contort for hours and hours, and it will always be fascinating to watch. One moment you're seeing his eyes shining as he swoons from the gentle touch of his infant son, and then the next moment he's seething in this quiet rage as he drifts in the ocean. This is my favorite performance in any film ever, I think. And in the same vein, this film boasts career bests in many of the other filmmaking disciplines too.
Mm-hmm.
My wife and I were discussing it the day after we watched it, and she actually got emotional. She started crying a little bit just on the pure artistry of Daniel Day-Lewis's performance.
Yep.
She was like, "Is that the same guy from Phantom Thread?" I said, "Yes." And she's like, "That is the true embodiment of art."
Yeah.
That he can transform himself and immerse himself so deeply in this character. Something that came up for me in researching the movie a little bit, some of the blurbs that I saw and the clickbait headlines, analyzing evil, Daniel Plainview. why Daniel Plainview is one of the most terrifying villains in film history. And then the Apple TV blurb to rent the movie or buy the movie says, a brutal, bloody, and gripping saga of obsession, corruption, and poisonous greed. Da-da-da-da-da. Unwavering inspection of a consummately evil man whose trailblazing spirit is equaled only by his murderous ambition. I almost was offended by that. Because I feel like the movie does such a great job of going headlong into Daniel Plainview's worldview and his aspirations. And listen, I'm not condoning murder. Don't get me don't get me wrong here. I think evil to me is almost unjustified. There's no moral code or anything. But with every action that Daniel Plainview takes, I think the movie does a pretty good job of, if not justifying, at least explaining where he's coming from,
Yes.
and you can kind of so for example, when he murders Henry Plainview, it's cold-blooded and it's terrifying, but you can see the hurt in his eyes that this man not only impersonated his brother and stuff. To me, it seems like he was almost going to let him off the hook until he said, Daniel, I'm your friend. I would never hurt you. That was when he was like, okay, this guy has to die for making me feel vulnerable, for betraying my trust. There's a justification there that is way beyond the black and white. This guy is evil.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
It's honestly hard not to root for a character that's so active in his pursuit, even though he's kind of a monster morally. At the same time, you are there with him and you are rooting for him. So that's a really good point. And that's all due to a number of elements in the film, including Daniel Day-Lewis's performance. It's a masterpiece. I think we all agree the film is a masterpiece on a number of levels. Can't wait to dig much deeper into our scene selection for the day, which we're going to call Oil and Fire. Connor, would you please give us the scene beats?
Sure, I'd love to. So this scene takes place almost exactly 1 hour into the film and runs about 8.5 minutes. So up to this point, oil prospector Daniel Plainview, played by Daniel Day-Lewis, has begun to drill a new well in Little Boston, California. His son H.W., played by Dillon Freasier, sits perched on the oil derrick, observing the crew operating the drill. Suddenly, the crew strikes oil, unleashing a gas blowout, which instantly deafens H.W. and sends him flying off of the derrick. Witnessing this, Plainview sprints to his son and carries him to safety, but abandons him to help control the geyser of fire that has erupted at the oil well. The fire burns into the night as the derrick collapses, and the next morning, Plainview's crew uses dynamite to blow the oil well and extinguish the fire. He's enchanted by the new ocean of oil under his feet, but knows that his son has been forever changed by the incident. End scene.
I think the score for the whole movie, you could do a dissertation on how the music works with this movie, but the opening being silent, except for the kind of plunging of the, I don't know the proper terminology for the mechanics of it, but it's going up and down. It kind of has this hypnotic churning sensation to it, and HW is watching on. I think that extended take tracking in to the rope piece of it plunging up and down before everything kicks off is the perfect way to do that, kind of lulling you into this kind of sleepy state before all hell breaks loose.
Yeah, it's such a calm way to start this scene. We start at a 0, and then it just goes up past 100 by the end of the time the scene ends. It is a great way to start.
I think for as exploratory as this film feels, and that sense of discovery that is throughout the whole movie of how could they have planned for when he whips the rope, the oil slashes across the lens, or the bowling ball hitting the pan and water flying everywhere. There's so much magic that happens that couldn't have possibly have been planned. There is something to be said for the masterful building blocks that they use from scene to scene to bring the audience in and then surprise them, or to work your way up to a really impactful moment. It's not as meandering as a Terrence Malick thing where you're trying to I feel a lot when I'm watching Terrence Malick, I'm trying to catch up with what the filmmaker is trying to do. This feels very intentional throughout. And so like this lulling in before all hell breaks loose, to me, it kind of echoes the ending where it's almost like madcap comedy, when he's like throwing the bowling pins and it's just like so silly. And then bam, it gets very real very quickly. I think Paul Thomas Anderson and Dylan Titchener, the editor, are really great at starting you in and then taking you somewhere really surprising.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really interesting you should say that, because I feel like this scene that we're talking about today kind of plays as a pivotal moment in the film where we get to see that Daniel is choosing oil and thus money and power over family. And that kind of starts that decline in his care for people around him.
Yeah, it's a great turning point in the film. I mean, I love that line. It feels like it sums up his thought process in a really succinct way. Like, there's a whole ocean of oil under our feet. No one can get at it except for me. Like, and there's such great visual storytelling in this scene. He's framed in silhouette against this like crazy destruction and fire burning in the night. It's just his character outlined against it. It's such a striking visual, and I think it's visually saying to me that all he can think about is the success that lies before him, kind of in this destruction.
Yeah, just thinking about the scene and what it means for a number of these characters, the three main characters in the scene being Daniel, HW, and we see Eli as well at a certain point. But it is such a definitive climactic scene because we see, on one hand, Daniel finally tear down that facade of being a family man, my son and partner HW. We see him tear down that image of himself and kind of choose to become a full-blown oil man. I care first and foremost about this thing that's driven me for years and years. And he sort of admits at the end of the film, maybe out of spite to some degree, but admits to HW, like, I kept you around because you're like a cute face.
Ugh,
I think he was doing it because he felt his son betrayed him, and he did have like some emotional connection to his son. But like he says in the film, he's a bit of a psychopath. Like he hates people, and he's in this for the pure drive and energy and momentum of it. And I feel like the scene really reveals that about him. And then you have Eli, where, Josh, I think it's just one shot of him, right? Like looking on at the derrick burning.
It's just the flames flickering on his face,
Which is an amazing shot. And again, the scene is crucial for that reason, because you see in his face and his eyes, like, it's further setting up this growing polarity between Eli and Plainview, because I think Eli knows that he may now have Daniel like right where he wants him. Like, it's been proven that the well has produced, and he is maybe seeing like the economic benefit of it, and is seeing the dollar.
It's gonna blow gold all over the place.
Yeah, it's gonna blow gold all over the place. He's gonna have the chance to expand his church and expand his flock of followers, and that is a huge threat to Daniel.
So I was debating with myself what that shot was telling us. Do you think? Well, first, okay. This one shot can warrant a whole conversation. Do you guys think Paul and Eli are the same person?
I don't.
Yeah, I never had seen it that way. It's interesting, but
yeah, that's a really interesting prospect. I think there's enough evidence and distinction in the performances and the way that Eli is he presents the information. What about our oil? And that he knows and calls his father Abel stupid because Abel let Paul come and tell Daniel the location of the farm,
right,
to come and begin all this. So I think there's evidence either way, honestly. But are you on the?
I'd be curious though, Josh, what you have read about or what you think.
I think if you read about the behind the scenes story, it might allude to reading it one way, but this time watching it, I tried to go in as cold as possible, and based really on the performances, I feel that Eli and Paul are the same person. I think that Eli basically assumes the Paul persona to do the dirty work. That's like his, so that he can say, well, Paul's like the evil one that sold out our family and brought this hell upon us, and then can go back to being this evangelist theatrical guy. So, and I think when Eli first comes up and introduces himself to Daniel and HW on their camping trip, Daniel gives this kind of subtle look to HW, like, what? So
I cannot wait to ask Dillon about that. I'm wondering if he took direction on that scene, giving that specific look of like, I recognize him. Is this must be his twin, right? Yeah, it's like the first time they're realizing it.
What's the game here?
Yeah, exactly.
So I think there's enough evidence in the performances, at least, to point to that. And in the end, when Daniel is bullying Eli, he is going on and on about Paul and how Paul's the chosen one.
Right.
And he gave him $10,000 on the spot. We didn't see that. He gave him, what, $500, $600? To give the plot,
right.
Yeah,
and then that was it. So I feel as though he's torturing Eli, saying like, I know your game, and using his own tool against himself. So so then that caters back to this shot. I guess my thought is this, let's call him Eli, is this Eli seeing the flames shooting up and realizing, oh my God, they've struck oil. This is going to blow gold all over the place. Like all of my like conniving, like plotting is going to pay off, and I'm going to like get this life that I wanted? Or is this Eli, the preacher, saying, oh my God, I've let the wolf into the hen house. Like, look, like the devil himself is here. There's flames literally licking the town that I grew up in.
Yeah. I think the fact that you can read it either way just speaks to the mastery of this film and its subtlety in its script, and kind of leaving that open, because the look on Eli's face in the scene is kind of somewhat ambiguous. Like it's kind of lustful, but at the same time it's sort of like there's a sense of dread on his face. And I think either way, I think the scene further sets up this contrast between Eli and Daniel's methodologies to gain control in different ways. Daniel has this capitalistic doctrine, and then Eli having this religious doctrine. And it's also this confirmation of Eli's bruised ego, that the well fire is even happening, and the deafening of HW happened as a result of some sort of divine punishment for not having blessed the well earlier in the film. So it's just kind of this, like, everything is coming to a head in so many different ways in the scene, and super effective, and glad we chose this one amongst many other amazing scenes that we could have analyzed.
I've become a huge fan of Dylan Titchener, the editor of this film, and he actually edited the assassination of Jesse James as well.
Oh, interesting.
So,
two big winners,
and,
same
as
year.
well as Wes Anderson movies. Like he's the bomb.
Cool.
But credit to those guys for lingering on these shots and like placing them in the right place so that we get that fodder to chew through every time we rewatch this movie.
Definitely.
It struck me this time, I feel like I'm probably going to be the one that's like defending Daniel. No, he's a good guy. He killed a few people, but come on. Cody, you raised that really interesting point that this is the turning point where he can kind of like take off his lamb's wool and reveal himself as the wolf. I don't know. It struck me that his first impulse, he knows immediately, gas, put that fire out. Like this is clearly a procedure and process that happens sometimes in this striking oil business. But his first impulse is, where is HW? I'm going to go get him. I'm going to bring him the safety, running with him all the way across the oil field. So that to me shows that he has some compassion and some like humanity and some like real connection with his son. But once he's physically okay, he even says like, are you hurt? Did you hit your head? Tell me where you're hurt. Like that sort of thing. And then immediately is like, okay, you're physically safe. Goodbye. and doesn't even really see or factor in the emotional needs of this child that, is clearly has just experienced the trauma and needs comforting. So I think that says a lot about how Daniel sees not only his son, but people in general. And in fact, later on in his monologue to Henry, when he's kind of describing his worldview, he says, I don't need to look past seeing them to get all I need. These people. So I think he is a very externally facing person and takes people from the outside and doesn't really care to look inside and see what their motivation and what their souls need.
Yeah. I mean, which makes the betrayal of Henry all the more heart-wrenching for him.
Yeah, it's like the one time he actually
opened up and is vulnerable, like you said earlier. Yeah, I mean, the one line that made me kind of think he's sort of shedding this former skin of his and embracing his newfound obsession and persona was Fletcher, one of his workers, Fletcher's line where he says, is HW okay?
Yeah.
This is as the fire is burning. And he responds, no, he isn't. And it's just such a matter of fact, like it's such a quick response. He says it immediately without any hesitation. Like, I don't know if he's okay. I don't know what's wrong. It's no, he's not okay. He's changed. And he has this like ready to fire in the back of his brain, even though he's like smiling creepily at this fire burning in front of him.
Yeah.
And it's like, he knows there's something wrong, but he's choosing to be there because that is his first and foremost priority.
I'm glad you brought up that line, Cody, because that really stuck with me on the rewatch of this too. How he immediately knows that something's changed with HW, and he's kind of like barking orders at his workers throughout this scene. Go do this, go do this. But this almost comes across as an order for his partner. It's like, no, he's not okay. He's in the mess room or something. And then his partner just kind of departs to go take care of HW. So it's just become another thing to kind of take care of, like from a business perspective in his point of view.
Yeah, it's a pretty tragic line.
Yeah.
Because it's like, the way I was reading it, you could almost excuse, there's so much happening, and who knows what this guy's upbringing was like. Like, he clearly doesn't have like emotional awareness, so you could almost excuse, I've made sure he's physically okay, I'm going to go take care of business. But then when he says, no, he isn't, it's like, Daniel, so something's wrong, man. Come on, be better.
Definitely.
Ugh.
And as great as Daniel Day-Lewis is, I also want to give credit to Dillon Freasier's performance as HW in the sequence, because it's really amazing. For a child actor, you can really feel the shock and worry that rushes over his face when he slowly realizes that he can no longer hear anything.
Yeah.
How did you guys feel about rewatching that?
Yeah, I mean, it was a great performance. I mean, so visceral, the way that the sound kind of accompanies his acting job. It's really kind of like heartbreaking when you see the realization dawn on him that he maybe won't be able to hear again.
Yes. Oh, completely agree. So the way that Dillon reads his line, like, I can't hear my own voice.
Oh,
that line has singularly stuck with me for a very, very long time. Like, I know, Josh, you and I have like talked about it many times, and it's such a vivid way with one simple line to describe what it may be like to suddenly just lose your hearing.
And your own voice.
Voice.
It doesn't get more horrifyingly like existential than that.
Right.
Like, you can't hear your own voice.
It's
your
something
own self.
you're used to for a lot of people, something you're used to for your entire life is that kind of rumble, at least being in your own head. And to say, I can't hear my own voice, it's just like, it's so impactful in the scene. And then last shot in the scene, the sort of tragic, haunting shot of Daniel and HW curled up on the ground as Daniel's comforting him, and HW is doing this like humming sound, just trying desperately to hear something in his head. Yeah, it's just awful. And I'm so excited to talk with him about this later, just because it's like for any actor, let alone a young child actor, having done this for the first time, I mean, it's like, talk about miracles. It's just unbelievable.
when you're that age, you almost kind of feel invincible without really acknowledging it.
Yeah.
If you get hurt, you scrape yourself, you're like, oh, it'll be okay over time. And you kind of see that realization as the scene unfolds that this is his new normal now, and he's having a hard time dealing with that.
Mm-hmm. So on top of these performances, which really, I think, make the scene and the movie, this is a movie where performances are so central to everything going on.
It's the main event.
Absolutely the main event. Next up, though, the thing that really ties it all together, them physically being in a space together and making this feel authentic and real. What did you all think of the production design elements of the scene?
So the concept of an oil derrick is simultaneously amazing and terrifying at the same time. Just the general scale of this object in this otherwise barren landscape. And one thing I really appreciated about this film was that they don't shy away from the absolute horrors that occur during drilling, especially during this time period. And I think it's safe to say that this scene basically features the closest thing that we get to a set piece for the film. We get pyrotechnics, this powerful blast, and this giant wooden structure collapsing.
Yeah, the fact that it's all cobbled together with like 2x4s and lumber is even more horrifying. This thing could go up in flames at any second.
Yeah, the decision to shoot the oil derrick practically, it leads to this palpable tension and the iconic look of the scene. And that's one thing. It's as a result of the set. We're really seeing and feeling the camera get doused in oil. Josh, you mentioned the shot where like a character's whipping that rope and it sprays the lens. And we're like in this very tangible, gritty, real feeling environment. We're there with the characters like mucking around, and we're getting the struggle of pulling HW off of the derrick and how desperate that is. And of course, the famous fire silhouette shot in the nighttime. And that all starts with doing things for real. With that said, I will just say that ILM, Industrial Light and Magic, the VFX company, they did do a great job generating the oil geyser digitally. There's that one shot, and you just can't do it practically, but there's that one really powerful initial burst of energy where the oil finally springs up through the ground, and it's that tilt up that like breaks the top of the derrick. Oh, it's an amazing shot, and I love that. You cannot achieve that practically, and they did such a great job. But yeah, I mean, in terms of the practical build of the derrick, Steve Kremen, who I think was the special effects supervisor on the film or worked in special effects, he said that the original proposal was to make the derrick out of steel and then put like a wood veneer on it that could burn so that they could do takes over and over again. So the whole thing wouldn't just go up in flames and collapse. But I guess it would have been really expensive and time consuming to do that. So classic Paul Thomas Anderson, just like, let's get it in the moment. Guerrilla filmmaking tactics, like just light it up and go for it.
Wow.
That's the approach they took instead. And I think it actually adds to that desperation of like needing to get the shot and the panic of it all. So I think it really worked out in the end.
Do we know how many times they reset?
All I read was that Robert Elswit, the cinematographer, I think he said it was like a nightmare.
Oh, I can't imagine.
Yeah, shooting on analog, 35 millimeter film format, like needing to compensate for this bright burning object amongst the darkness and the latitude of light there. And like, how do you predict that?
Oh, yeah.
And so I think he said it was a complete nightmare to shoot. And I really don't think they reset it. Like, wow. I think they just kind of let it collapse and burn and just did what they could surrounding it. And then the next day, I think they like rebuilt a few aspects of it, like the top of the derrick, and got like pickup shots of it, I think is what I was reading.
That practicality that you talked about, Cody, it adds so much to the urgency of this entire scene. And I can imagine how hard it would be to shoot, not only for the crew, but for the cast, just like slipping around in that oil. You really feel like you're there with that like practical element of the oil covering like literally every surface, and Plainview is just like soaked in it.
Yeah.
And after doing a little bit of research, so it sounds like each formula of oil was based on how viscous, dark, and flammable it had to be for that specific scene they were shooting. And of all these, PTA said that one concoction used the stuff that they actually put in chocolate milkshakes at McDonald's. So
Oh,
good callback to the milkshake line.
yeah. Drink your
Oh,
milkshake.
yeah.
I wear your milkshake.
Yeah. That's what gave him the idea.
Yeah.
So talking about doing things practically throughout the film, and I think it does a good job of kind of subconsciously reminding the viewer of the environmental impact of this heavy industry that's happening at this time with no regulation whatsoever, is the smoke plumes that are constantly in the background of shots, even in dialogue shots. It's just reminding you that this is like a gritty, hard to breathe, rough place. And a funny thing that I read was that this was the heyday, like we said, 2007, 2008, like, holy crap, all these masterpiece movies were being made simultaneously. And they were filming around Marfa, Texas. And down the road, No Country for Old Men was filming at the same time in the same desert. And they were testing pyrotechnics for this shoot that they were getting ready for. And a huge billowing, plume of smoke went up and blew into No Country for Old Men shoot and just ruined their day of filming. They had to
That is crazy.
to break and come back the next day after it dissipated.
Oh,
I heard there was like a friendly rivalry between the Coens and PTA in that the Coens, I think they rented out all the motels in the nearby area for all their actors and everybody.
I mean, Marfa
on
is
production.
tiny, so they probably just overran that town. That's really funny.
Yeah.
So being in the hands of Paul Thomas Anderson, being in the hands of Daniel Day-Lewis, as an audience member, you feel safe in their hands, like you assume that the choices they're making, there's intention behind them, like you're going to go along for the ride. And I think the production design, I don't know what I'm seeing with all the ropes and the pulleys and the wheels. I don't know the mechanics of it, but I know it's accurate. Like, I just have faith that these guys researched this to hell and back, and it's just like, this is how it was done, pulling the lever to kick off the oil rig. And the cinematography, I assume the production design team was elated to see these long meandering takes that really examine the intricacies of the mechanisms and stuff. At the same time, they were probably also a little terrified because it's like, I thought this was going to be on screen for 30 seconds and we cheated this thing, or that's actually toilet paper or whatever.
There's nowhere to hide.
Yeah, there's nowhere to hide.
Yeah, and just cinematography wise, that course of 2 days or whatever this scene unfolds over is just like a visual feast. Like, we get treated to these like truly breathtaking contrasts between like the dark night sky and this burning wooden structure, and then the contrast of that in like the harsh light of day the next morning. It's just like a very cool visual treat here.
Yeah, that like bleary-eyed early morning the next day. Yeah, definitely.
It's interesting. I feel like the derrick, when it starts to malfunction, that's when we start to get a quicker succession of cuts too, editing wise. And I feel like that's obviously in an effort to boost the suspense and chaos of the situation. And then we also get a lot of tracking shots, which help place the audience right in the middle of the chaos that's taking place.
Yeah, it's very violent. I think that the opening kind of lull, long take, going up to them hitting gas, and then it's cut. It really feels explosive and violent, and definitely feels very dramatic what's happening.
Going back to something, I think, Josh, that you said about the oil sloshing onto the camera lens. It's funny that they use that in this movie. Obviously, there's a couple times it happens. I normally associate that with almost something a little bit more hokey, like a 3D movie that's just trying to, you know what I mean? Just trying to like bring the audience into something. Yeah. But in this, it completely worked for me.
Yeah, it feels spontaneous. So that it's like in a Malick movie where they capture the grasshoppers all taking flight at the same time or whatever. It's like you could not have planned for that in a million years. Somehow the camera was rolling when it happened. I think that magic is what makes it work, in my opinion.
So one thing that I picked up on watching this is there's this great warmth that comes through in like the film stock or lens that this was shot with. And I had done a little bit of research online that PTA had used a special 43 millimeter lens in a few shots, and was wondering if you guys could tell if that kind of lens was maybe used throughout this sequence in any shots.
One scene I know that they use the lens on is when Daniel and HW are on the train with the baby.
Yeah.
Baby HW. Yeah.
I'm not sure what specific shots that was used for, but I would guess there's one shot in this sequence where there's this borderline distracting vignette around the lens. It's this red glow. I would say that was something that they, which I mean, let's just speak to the cojones that takes to, you're burning this thing in the middle of the night and all these people are running around like crazy. Let's throw on this experimental, 20th century lens and see what happens. It's pretty baller.
Yeah.
It's super cool. I mean, it added so much in terms of ambiance to the scene.
Certain lenses, especially older lenses that you apply to a newer camera, newer sensor technology, that's what would often create that vignette, because the size of the lens, it's the lens element, like the glass element on the lens itself, doesn't necessarily line up perfectly with the sensor of the camera.
Makes sense.
It doesn't cover the full 35 millimeter sensor.
Yeah,
so
that could
makes
be
sense. So like pulling this lens from 1910 or whatever and throwing it on the camera and shooting the one big action set piece is a really brash and like brave decision. But then also shooting that really intimate moment between baby and father with that same lens, it feels very in the moment. He has all the tools at his disposal and he's going to use them however it suits it in the moment. I know in the Master they shot on IMAX, like 70 millimeter film, but it's just two people talking around a table. It's not when you would use IMAX conventionally, but it's beautiful, and why not? So I really appreciate that he has access to all this stuff, so why not have fun and use the tools for when it feels appropriate.
And just because I don't think we've mentioned it yet, Robert Elswit won the Academy Award for Best Cinematography for There Will Be Blood in 2008. So, just saying it's really stunning.
Yeah.
Speaking of Academy Awards, it's a damn shame that Johnny Greenwood couldn't be nominated. Do you guys want to talk about sound in this scene specifically?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, one of the main drivers of the scene and the movie.
The movie as a whole.
Yeah.
Why couldn't Johnny be nominated? What was the...
It was because I think it was an archaic technicality, one of which was in this scene using a track from Body Song, I believe. So the Academy ruled that he was using past work, like from other projects, and he wasn't eligible as a result.
Wow.
Like it was more of a soundtrack thing versus score, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that a couple of times. I know the soundtrack for Arrival also suffered the same fate. It's like one of the best soundtracks ever made, and then they used On the Nature of Daylight by Max Richter for the opening and closing, and they became ineligible.
Oh, that is
really
so
unfortunate.
robbed.
No, but I think the score in this scene is amazing. Once Daniel has HW in his arms, we get Greenwood's score, which starts as like this pulse similar to a heartbeat. And it made me feel this sense of relief that his child is alive. But then before he arrives to the safety of the den, the pulsing score is interrupted with these syncopated percussive beats that create this sense of unpredictability and building tension. And to me, it also kind of represents the various competing interests that are being thrown at Daniel Plainview at the same time.
Oh, that's
I like
great.
that. That's really good.
I could definitely see. I wanted to ask you about this specifically, Mark, so I'm glad you brought that up, because you do get this sense of like things that are sort of offbeat, like overlapping each other. And it really like became apparent to me rewatching this, how heavy like the horror influence is on this scene. It's like very unsettling, kind of shows the chaos of the situation. And this read like PTA's version of a horror movie to me, especially with the sound.
This scene or the movie in general?
Well, I think the movie in general, but like this scene, the score very much cued like horror to me.
Yeah. This score in general is like one of my favorite scores of all time. A huge impact on me. But this scene, I think, features the song that's most like Greenwood's work in Radiohead and in that like percussive quality. And I think the score throughout contrasts with the visuals often. There's a term that a experimental film teacher used at one point called vertical montage. I don't know if you guys are familiar.
Mm-hmm.
The most obvious example would be like a horror movie that's set to somewhere over the rainbow, or like, you know, a scene like that where the two clearly clash. And that's been used in trailers and stuff to great effect. But here, he really lets Greenwood kind of like go off and create these really haunting, almost 2001-esque tapestries that almost aren't speaking to the movie, but when put together with the images, they work. You know, you're just seeing people dig around in the dirt or drill for oil, but you're hearing these like screeching strings that feel really haunting. There's some elements of the Psycho score, dun 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 dun.
Mm-hmm.
It feels less written to the picture, you know, like PTA's previous movies and John Bryan scores and stuff, which were all great, but they were like kind of perfect. This feels like there's a tension between picture and sound that really elevates this movie to have the staying power that it has.
Well said.
Yeah.
I think the sound design of this scene in general is just kind of fascinating because we're tossed back and forth between the powerful blast of the explosion, and then we get these moments of muffled silence, which is obviously there to depict HW's hearing loss.
Yeah.
Yeah. They could have easily taken that hearing loss sound design, or lack thereof, you know, intentional silence. They could have taken that a step too far and have gone like war movie with it, where you're hearing that like super high pitched whine in the forefront of the mix. And it's like, oh, he's lost his hearing, but instead they opt for like a more subtle effect.
Totally.
So I know we chose this scene to talk about today, but there's so many other memorable moments in this film. Are there any other ones that you guys want to talk about? Josh, I know you're particularly fond of the opening of the movie.
Love the opening. What is it, like 15 minutes?
Yeah.
The only line of dialogue is the uttered, "There she is. There she is." That's all he says for 15 minutes.
Is that when he finds the silver in the
like the ore?
Or the ore? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And spits on it. There she is. That's one of that's one of a million lines that at least Cody and I have been quoting for years.
Yeah.
I think that deserves its own discussion in a lot of ways. It immediately sets up that this movie is going to speak a different language than movies you're used to. It struck me watching it that, you know, if you were to give this to Edgar Wright, you could put that through the Edgar Wright machine and come out with a montage that's 60 seconds long, and tells the same story beats. But I think the effect would be that you're not an active participant. You're just being told this information and letting it wash over you. It has its own place, and those can be fun to watch, but they, to me, aren't as engaging as, no, we're going to show you this step by step, beat by beat. What tools does he use? What's the methodology, the process? Cody, like you say, it really invites you or demands that you have to pay attention so that you get these nonverbal little hints and clues that are going to pay off later down the line and inform you about the character. So yeah, the opening definitely is, you know, one of my all-time favorites.
I wanted to give a quick shout out to the scene that directly precedes this one, which is one of my favorites. Just touch on this for a sec, but we'll call it the "Get Out of Here" ghost scene with Paul Dano. Do you guys remember like what you experienced when you saw that scene for the first time?
My jaw was just, my mouth was just open the entire time. Like I couldn't believe what I was watching when I saw that.
In a lot of ways, it was like a introduction to Paul Dano for me. I mean, I had seen, Little Miss Sunshine. I think I remember reading, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he was given like a few weeks to prepare for this role.
Yeah.
Right?
It was
like,
a few days.
It was like 9 days or something. Yeah.
Crazy. I mean, how intimidating to be a young actor going toe-to-toe with Daniel Day-Lewis, who has been prepping for this role for God knows how long.
Yeah.
And having to deliver a performance, and just knowing that and rewatching the scene, like Paul Dano just like absolutely kills it. I just love how much he goes for it with this scene. It's
Yeah.
incredible. One of my favorites of the whole movie.
Totally. And him making the very, very risky decision from a performance standpoint to kind of embody the devil or demons in a way through this like really specific tonality in his voice. It's like
guttural.
Very guttural. And it's like
out of here, ghost.
Get out.
It's so great. And he is not making himself look good. You know, like there's so many performers that just would never take it to this level of commitment. Like you said, Connor, he committed, he gave it his absolute all, and it like paid off in such a major way. Cause it's like, it's really scary. It's scary to see like what this thing he's doing is capable of and how it's entrancing these people, and
everyone's falling for it.
Right.
Everyone's falling for it. Like
they're just eating it up.
It's like dangerous in so many ways. And I think his like visceral performance really just makes that danger that much more palpable.
Yeah, well,
I mean, you could see the theatricality. I mean, it's like Daniel says, it's one goddamn hell of a show. For this community that's out in the middle of the desert, like nothing else better to do. This is their fire to gather around.
Mm-hmm.
And that contrasts so nicely with the ending scene where we see a lot more of a deflated Eli when he's coming with his tail between his legs, asking Daniel for money, and obviously we get the iconic milkshake monologue at this point too.
And his dress, he's fully dressed as like almost like a TV televangelist guy. Like he's totally adorned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The most special moments of the film are in this morality battle between Plainview and Eli, and all of these scenes together.
Mm-hmm.
What do you chalk up as your favorite lines? I mean, some of mine are like the most small, like unimportant lines are the ones that stick out to me.
One that stuck out to me this time that I guess I didn't really put too much importance on the first time or second time I saw the movie was when he asks Henry about the peach dance.
Where he
did the peach tree dance.
Yes, the peach tree dance.
He knows definitively that
when he doesn't see that light flicker in his eyes, like, oh yeah, I remember what you're talking about. That's almost his evidence. That's the final nail in the coffin for him to realize, oh wait, this isn't my brother.
Yeah.
That's such a great moment.
We already talked about mine a bit, but like "Get out of here, ghost" is my favorite quote from the movie, and just how many different ways it gets delivered by Paul Dano.
Yeah. I think one, just from like a personal standpoint, one of my favorites, just because Josh, I know like we use this all the time after having seen it, is "Don't be thick in front of me, Al."
That's so good.
What about you, Josh?
There was one that just recently came to mind, even before I knew we were doing this and before the rewatch. I recently went on a trip, our first big excursion with our 1-year-old son. It was a big endeavor for us, and I kept hearing the refrain when Daniel and HW get to the Sunday Ranch, and the father, Sunday, says that he'll help them set up camp, and he says like, "Nope, we set ourselves on this trip. It's only right we do the camping."
Oh, okay.
Something like that. So I just kept, I had like Daniel Plainview cheering me on.
Yeah.
Well, as we wind down on the scene and There Will Be Blood as a whole, any final thoughts on the film upon rewatch and going into the future?
Yeah, I really enjoyed rewatching this. My wife was present for a portion of it, and it reminded me of how patient the movie expects the audience to be. And I think the pacing can be quite slow with a heavy emphasis on deliberate character development, which I can really appreciate. And it's a slow burn for sure, but I think it's better for it.
Yeah. I think maybe you said this, Josh, but this is one that I'll just be like unpacking forever. And I mean that as like the ultimate compliment. Any film that can give you something that invites you to question things like, are Paul and Eli the same? You know, it's just, you can read it so many different ways, and it's just so rich with those things to dig into in every scene of the film. And there's just so much to it and more that reveals itself on every rewatch. So I really enjoyed watching this one again. And I think every stage of life that I watch this, I'll be able to get something new out of it.
it is always intentional, and like each choice has a narrative component to it. There's something to
Mhm.
derive from every shot in a way that doesn't feel super self-indulgent,
Right.
like it doesn't
Right.
feel like it's our job to put it together for the filmmaker. It feels like, this guy had an intention with every choice he makes.
Oh yeah.
It feels
Absolutely.
like all of these disparate parts coming together
Yeah.
and giving you as the viewer enough ownership over putting it together in your own mind and how you interpret certain things that it feels like your own experience at the end.
Yeah. There are many, many scenes in the film that
Mhm.
warrant a full breakdown, another several hour episode.
Yeah.
But this oil and fire scene really strikes the perfect balance between iconic visual storytelling and these indelible images with the thematic resonance of the
Mhm.
film. And it
Mhm.
serves as a major turning point in the movie all in one. It was so fun to revisit the film with you guys and break this down. Josh, thank you for all of your thoughts as kind of the PTA and There Will Be Blood super fan.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Josh.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for inviting me to do this. It was a huge reminder of how important this movie is to
Mhm.
just me personally and just the filmmaking prowess, and it really warrants. It asks a lot of the audience, but it definitely warrants an intentional, focused viewing. So I appreciate the excuse to do that.
Absolutely. Thank you. And now that we've broken down the oil and fire scene in detail, as well as other aspects of the film, we'd love to welcome on our special guest, Dillon Freasier, who plays the role of H.W. Plainview in the film, for his pro take.
Amateur or professional?
Professional.
Hi, Dillon. Thank you so much for joining us on Scenecraft to talk about There Will Be Blood.
I'm happy to be here.
So first off, we just want to say how wonderful and natural you are in this film. And though you did take a different career path, H.W. Plainview will always be such a memorable character that you brought to life through your performance. And we really appreciate you walking us through the details that have stuck with you over the years. So can you please tell us the story of your casting process and, of course, the chance encounter with casting director Cassandra Koulakundis?
Yeah, so I was at Dirk Sanderson Elementary School there in Fort Davis, Texas. I can't remember exactly what grade I was in. I guess Cassandra had kind of started beating the streets out there and really looking for a kid that would fit this, this character that they were trying to cast. And she was going to all the schools, and the principal there at Dirk Sanderson at the time, Mr. Merrill, he had kind of, I guess, talked to Cassandra and said, yeah, I have just the guy. So went in and talked to Cassandra, and she, of course, videotaped our conversation in Miss Glover's classroom there, in her first grade classroom, during recess or something where all the kids were out. So she had us read through some lines, on camera. It was pretty straightforward. And after that, I don't think we heard from him for a while. Eventually, my mother got a phone call, wanted some follow-ups, and I think the next time that I'd ended up rendezvousing with those cats, it was in my living room there in Fort Davis. We lived in a little trailer house. They ended up coming over. It was Sandra and I believe Paul, and we just kind of flipped through the script, and he just kind of gave me the rundown, as best he could, as it was a very thick script, well written, of course, but I was like, 9 or 10 or something, so I really wasn't into reading like that. So he just kind of, went through, kind of explained some stuff with me. Then from there, we kind of just went and I showed him around the house, showed him around the little property we had. We had horses out behind the house. There was a lot, we had a donkey in there, and I'd run and jump on the donkey, and the donkey would take off running, and they just got a kick out of that, That donkey's still alive, by the way.
Wow.
It's pretty, I don't know. They lived to be like, I guess they lived to be 30 years old or something. But after that, it was a lot of sit and wait. Nothing was ever set in stone. I didn't really know for sure what was going on. Never really heard anything else. And then, some time passed. I'm not exactly sure how much time, but they invited us out to, the set to do some demo reels, to do some wardrobe and stuff like that. Get me acquainted with Daniel. We ended up going out. It was like a tent city because it was out in the middle of the desert. It's just like a forward operating base, just with, hundreds of people, it seemed like, to me as such a young man. I guess I just kind of gradually got into it. It wasn't just like there wasn't an actual moment where like an aha moment where I'm going to be in a film, you know. It was essentially just, I eased right into it. It was easy, you know, it wasn't hard.
What was your sense for the scale of the project that you were embarking on?
I knew it was big. I knew it was bigger than anything I'd ever seen in, you know, that little West Texas town. I knew for a fact that, you know, it was going to be big because there was people from all over. There were people from all over, and you could tell where the culture was different. They were, you know, they weren't from there, you know, and that's what I was gathering as a child, you know, even down to wardrobe, you know, trying on wardrobe and stuff. I'm looking at all these clothes, period correct and super old clothing, and that small stuff that I noticed as a child kind of helped me understand that, you know, this was a lot bigger than anything I'd ever seen.
That's amazing. No, I'm sure it was an incredible experience to get brought into the film like that. But I was just curious, because this is your first real acting role, did they provide like an acting coach for you on set, or was it really just your natural ability and the interactions with Paul and Daniel that gave you that crash course on acting, which you never would have known this was your first role, by the way. It's so impressive. You did a really incredible job in this movie.
It was, I guess, all me. You know, I didn't have any kind of coaches or, I just kind of went in and, you know, Paul doing his thing, directing, you know, here's where we're at, Dillon. This is what's going on. This is what I want from you, you know?
Wow.
Yeah, you hear like lore from other child performances in other films, like in The Shining. Danny Torrance thought he was in a comedy the whole time. They no idea he was in one of the scariest movies ever made. It sounds like Paul was a little more direct with you about the context and kind of what you guys were playing.
Sure. I was, they say, kind of wise beyond my years. I was pretty mature. You know, I could sit down and have old man talk with a guy, you know, on his front porch there in Fort Davis, Texas, you know, and talk about the weather. What do you know, this and that. So I guess people always felt like they could be, you know, they could talk to me like an adult or an intellectual, and I was able to just kind of picture everything that's going on and, you know, envision it as well. And it was neat to kind of learn how to take, I guess, your physical being, your appearance, and kind of paint with it, you know, just to like convey emotion with face, you know, your facial expression stuff was really neat, kind of hard. Like it was a hard curve to kind of just go with the flow and wing, you know, but when I did, when it all clicked and I was able to actually be comfortable in front of the camera, you know, I couldn't tell you exactly when that moment was, but I remember it being just night and day difference.
Absolutely. I mean, one of those moments that we love, that we talked about, where you can tell you're just wielding those emotions like with a paintbrush, and it had clearly clicked by this point, was the moment when your and Daniel's character first encounter Eli at the Sunday Ranch. And there's this really specific moment where Daniel turns to you and kind of silently nods as if to say, Eli looks exactly like his brother Paul. Do you recall getting like really specific direction for something like that? Or are you just sort of reacting to what Daniel is doing?
I think we were just kind of playing off of each other. I think, you know, Daniel was, you know, he's fantastic, probably one of the greatest to ever do it, you know. I was just kind of going with the flow, bouncing off of him because he's just this powerhouse of a performer. Yeah, it wasn't planned, you know, it just kind of happened. And I remember Paul was like, I love this. You know, we were looking at the little screen after we shot that, and he was like, I love this. This is good. But I didn't have to do much. Like I said, I just kind of had to go with the flow. And that's just how amazing Daniel was.
In the conversation that we were having before this, we got into a little bit of a debate whether Paul and Eli are the same person or if they're twin brothers. Do you have what's your theory, or has that evolved over time? Where do you stand on that?
So they're twins, you know. That's my take on it. Eli kind of stayed around, and Paul Sunday dipped out and sold his family out, so, you know, sought a better life. He's an opportunist. Smart guy.
Well, you know what? We've got definitive proof right there then. Sorry, Josh.
Sorry, Josh.
My pet theory has been crushed after however many years.
Yeah, and it's funny because, again, we talked about this before this, but the fact that it could be interpreted, the information you're getting from you and Daniel and from the mastery of how it's shot, and you can interpret it either way, even though you would be led to believe there's an actual twin brother, but that kind of subtlety and mystery of it. It just speaks to like how
Mhm.
amazing the film is. So
Sure, absolutely. Like Eli, had this plan to get all this money for his church. Went and sold out.
Mhm.
That does make sense. I love that.
One thing I was curious about, you have a lot of the scenes in this film where you're doing things. You have moments of business. You're hammering stakes for a tent. You're firing a hunting rifle. Were these all things that you had already done in the past, or did you have someone on set instructing you for these moments?
So as far as like firing the shotguns and stuff, they had specialized people that kind of had to be there to facilitate that kind of stuff. But I mean, I had fired plenty of guns in my lifetime up until that point.
Okay.
It was probably my favorite part of filming. As a kid, getting to fire shotguns is pretty crazy. So I really enjoyed that, driving stakes in
Yeah.
the ground, stuff like that. That was showbiz. That was just me. That was run of the mill for me. I didn't really have to have any direction on that.
And how about chugging an entire glass of milk in one long take? Did that?
Yeah.
Was that hard to? How many takes did you have to do to get that right?
I think we did like 3 or 4 of those. I mean, like back to back, maybe a little break
Okay.
here or there.
Oof.
But it was brutal. It was because I believe
Yeah.
it was milk, and then it was like tea to look like whiskey. It was tea. It was just the worst thing I've ever tasted in my life. If you've ever, I don't recommend it, but I remember it had like a weird fish taste to it. Like it was just like it was something I just really didn't like, but I had to
Ugh.
do it. But it worked out because, and that may well have been a plant or something to make me make a grimace, because
Right.
it was whiskey, could have been what it was. Maybe that's just something we'll never know.
oh, love it.
Funny.
And then digging into the oil derrick explosion scene a little bit, there's this really effective shot where they strike a pocket of gas and it sort of blows back your hair and then launches you off of the platform. So we've watched this frame by frame. It is so hard to tell whether it's you being blown back or if it's a stunt double flying through the air. So I wanted to ask about that. And then also, what was it like to shoot the scene as a whole, which seems to be one of the most physically demanding parts of the role?
Yeah. So that was 100% me.
Wow.
They
Wow.
actually did bring in a guy to do. He was a man, so he had a a man build. He didn't look like a
Mhm.
child, but they ended up trying him out. It just didn't look right because we just had such different builds.
Mm-hmm.
They ended up going with me doing it, and it was great. I loved it. It was probably the most fun I had, during that whole thing. As far as that scene goes, it was a tough scene to do, going from not ever acting, ever having done it, to having to convey that kind of emotion.
Mm-hmm.
It was tough. It was hard, but it was like you break through that wall and you get into that part of you, and there's like an aha moment, and you can really work it. And I think that's what it ultimately ended up happening, and it worked out. But, yeah, it was great. And watching it now, because I've spent years working in the oil field, servicing these old wells and stuff, it's just super realistic to watch.
Yeah.
I have such a deep, profound appreciation for that.
So in our research, we had read the actual oil depicted on screen was some kind of chocolatey concoction. What was that experience like of just being completely covered in this stuff? Because it looks like there's some moments that it's actually like running into your eyes and mouth.
It was awful. it was flat out terrible. I believe that I had to get painted up 2 or 3 times.
Ugh.
And I hated it. Like I had read too that it was some sort of chocolatey, whatever's in the McFlurry or something.
Uh-huh.
I never knew that because it definitely wasn't sweet. It was awful. It was terrible. It was just like taking molasses and matting down your hair, and just having to walk around all sticky, and it was terrible. But it made for a great scene. So
There's one specific shot where one of the oilmen like lift you down off the shed and into Daniel's arms. And I've always been curious if they just like grabbed your like bibs and like held you down there, or if there was some sort of rig underneath your clothes that allowed them to hold you safely as they lowered you down.
right there was a harness that they had attached a handle to, behind my collar.
Okay, that's good. Even though you were a hard scrabble Texas boy, they weren't like picking you up by the scruff of your neck and
I guess for insurance reasons, they had to use a handle. I don't know.
Gotcha.
Sure. Yeah.
Makes sense.
After this scene, then your character has now established this sudden loss of hearing. I assume you knew going into the role that that was going to be part of the kind of burden is picking up some ASL. Did you have a like a sign language coach on set?
Yeah, so I had a sign language coach on set, and he was an extra, and he was in some of he's actually the sign language coach when they're spudding in the well, and me and that guy are kind of running some ASL. It was that guy. He taught me,
Oh, cool.
he taught me ASL enough to get by, where I looked like I knew I was learning. So it was neat to pick that up. But unfortunately, if you don't use it, you lose it. So I'm not as good anymore as I once was.
After this scene, after this film wraps, when the film went on to be so beloved and win just a bunch of Oscars, do you remember there being a lot of conversation and pride around your community and the classmates that you went to school with? Seems like it would have been an exciting time in your area just with that kind of going on.
There certainly was quite a bit of it. I didn't like to talk about it or, I didn't want to come off as like I was gloating or anything. I just wanted to kind of live my life. But definitely went noticed. It was noticed in the town for sure. And people still talk about it. If I run into somebody at the store, it's not very often I meet somebody new in my hometown, but I will, because unfortunately I don't know everybody in this town, but they'll be like, you're Dillon Freasier. You were the one in that movie. And I'm like, yeah, that was me. So, I mean, people still talk about it, but it wasn't like a huge thing.
And so looking back on your experience as a whole, is there a particular sequence or scene that you were proud of in terms of your own performance or something you really love watching back or find interesting?
I guess like we were talking about the Derek explosion, that still gives me chills, to watch. And with my real world experience, it kind of helps, amplify those chills, I'm sure. But there's a scene where Mary Sunday and HW are walking in this pen, like these goat pens or something. And there's surveyors up on the hill. And there's a little bit of dialogue between Mary and HW. I appreciate that when I see it. I'm like, wow, actually did pretty good. I looked like I knew what I was doing over there, but at the time, I was doing the best I could. Yeah,
that's great.
So,
how has your relationship to the film evolved over time? Obviously, you had one understanding while you were doing it, but as time has gone on, I mean, it shifts for us just as viewers as we come back and watch it from time to time.
So when it first came out, it was something I was more attached to, more like I knew more about behind the scenes. It was not necessarily harder to watch as a fan or like as a viewer, a moviegoer. But now it's definitely, I'm so detached from it. I have memories of doing it, but I can watch it and appreciate it for what it is and not for like what I knew, when you're in that world and you're working on that, it becomes like just every day. It's kind of like when you have fond memories with, like high school or something.
Yeah.
Every day was the same thing, monotonous. You have a goal, you're trying to make it to that goal. And then at the end, you think back, it's like it has more value because you have that, you're more detached from it, I guess. So you have that better, grander view. I get to watch it now. I probably only watch it every couple years, maybe not even that, but it's like every time I watch it, it's like the first time I watch it and I love it.
Amazing.
Cool. Well, so I just had a son recently, and we've heard that you have a son. Have you showed him the film yet, or is that something that you look forward to doing one day? Is sharing this with him?
He's 2 now. He's working on 3. I mean, his birthday's in October, so
great.
We're starting to have conversations and talk a little bit. We'll be digging through Amazon Prime looking for something to watch, and I'll scroll by, and as soon as you come across There Will Be Blood, I'm right there next to Daniel in the,
wow,
one of those Signal Hill scene,
Yeah.
when he's talking to everybody. So he sees that, and I go, "Who's that?" And he goes, "That's Dada." So
that's so cool.
I don't think he understands how like grabbing it, but I wonder how neat that is to him that Dada is in the TV.
Well, thank you, Dillon, for all of the detail on the film. There Will Be Blood is such a timeless masterpiece. So thank you for everything you did to make it that much better and for talking with us today.
Wow, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you again to Dillon Freasier for his pro take on There Will Be Blood. And thank you to our listeners and fellow movie enthusiasts for reliving this scene with us. Do you have a favorite scene from There Will Be Blood? You can email us at contact@scenecraftpodcast.com with any of your thoughts or comments, or follow us on Instagram, X, TikTok, or Threads at Scenecraft Podcast for any scheduling updates and news. You can support the podcast by leaving us a review or star rating on your platform of choice. And as always, a very special thanks to Jordan Summerlad for our theme music. This has been Scenecraft, where we break down the craft behind our favorite scenes. See you all next time.